Okay, let's see here. So question number 1, this is 7.2, so hopefully grade 7 you've gotten as far as 7.2. And these are adding fractions that do not have common denominators. So the extension to this is, in the last section you learned how to find common denominators. So in order to add two fractions together, you've learned now that you have to have the same size pieces in order to count them, and therefore you have to have equivalent fractions that have the same denominator. So for the first question, it says 2/3 plus a half will be more than 1. This one does not require any adding, and here's why. This fraction here, 2/3, is more than half, correct? This fraction is half. And anytime you add something that's more than half to something that is half, you will have something more than 1. So your answer is true. Now, some of you probably actually showed your work. So if I was to write this down, I have to use a common denominator. The first multiple both 2 and 3 share is 6. So the equivalent fraction to 2/3 will be 4/6. That's the same amount. And the equivalent fraction here is 3/6. And when I add that, I end up with 7/6, which is an improper fraction, which we know are the types of fractions that represent more than 1. And in fact, it represents 1 and a sixth. Question 2 says the sum, don't forget the sum means the answer to an addition. So the sum of 1/3 and 1/4 will be greater than a half. This one I'm not quite so sure of, so I actually have to do the work. So 1/3 plus 1/4, and we're going to see what we get here. Actually, I do know the answer. Why am I saying that? But I'm going to find a common denominator, and this one I'm going to use 12. 1/3 is equivalent to 4/12, that's the same amount. And 1/4 of something is equal to 3/12. So when I put that together, I get 7/12 as my answer. And I know that half would have been 6/12. And since I have 7/12, it's true. The answer is going to be greater than half, because 7/12 is greater than 6/12. Question 3, the only common denominator for adding a half. Oops, I can't see that, can I? Let's put this to page width. There we go, that's better. The only common denominators for adding a half and a quarter are 4 and 8. The answer is false. There are infinite common denominators you could use. You could have used 40. You could have used 4,000. You could have used 2,228. That would have been one. There are infinite common denominators you can have. The lowest common denominator they share is 4, but any common denominator that's a multiple of 2 and 4 could be used. Question 4, what is the sum in lowest terms of this? So we have to interpret these pictures. This one is broken up into 8 parts and 3 are shaded, so this is representing 3/8. The other one is representing 1/3. So what is 3/8 plus 1/3? The common multiples they share, the lowest they share is going to be 24. So when I multiply it by 3, I get 9/24 as an equivalent fraction. And I get 8/24 as an equivalent fraction. When I add the numerators, I get 17/24, which is lowest terms because 17 is a prime number, and the only thing divisible in 17 is 17, and 24 does not have 17 as a factor. Question 5 says, what is the sum of this picture in lowest terms? So for this one, we have 7/9, take away, we have 12 we have 12 altogether, and we have 7 shades, so 7/12. This one's a little trickier to find your common denominator. So we're going to look at multiples of 9 and multiples of 12. And you know what? Since it's going to be pretty complicated, I probably don't want to go too far, but we'll see. So 9 and 18 and 27 and 36, and we'll go 45. I'll stop there just to see. 12, 24, 30. Oh, look at that. We found one. So 36 is the lowest common denominator. Now, some of you might have used 108. That's not wrong. It just means when you get your answer, you're going to be working with bigger numbers and you have to reduce your answer in the end. But if we use 36 as a common denominator, then I would multiply this by 4 and this by 4. I get 28/36. Multiply each of these by 3. I get 21. You're going to subtract your numerators and you're going to keep your denominator. So 28 take away 21 is 7. So your answer in lowest terms is 7/36. Question 6, what is the sum in lowest terms? So the lowest common multiple 4 and 10 share is actually the number 20. Now some of you might have used 40. It's okay if you did. But if you use 20, you're going to have your answer in lowest terms. So we have 15/20 plus 2/20 is 17/20. Now, if you use 40, let's just try it for a second. If you use 40, you would have multiplied this by 10, and this by 10, you would have got 30/40. This by 4, and this by 4, you would have 4. You would have ended up with 34/40, which is not lowest terms, because both have a factor of 2 that's common. You would reduce it down to 17/20, which is the answer we got over here. Question 7, an easy question. 5/8 take away 1/4. I'm going to keep 5/8. I'm going to change 1/4 to 2/8 because they're equivalent. 5 take away 2 is 3, and therefore our answer is 3/8. Question 8, we have 3 operations. We haven't seen these before, but it shouldn't be too hard. If I look at 5, 4, and 10, the common multiple they all share is actually the number 20. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change these all to 20ths. 4/20, 5/20, and 6/20. So 4/20 plus 5/20 is 9/20, and 9/20 take away 6/20 is 3/20, which is what your answer is. Question 9 says a bus pulls up to a stop 3/4 full and 2/5 get off. At the next stop, the number of people doubles. What fraction of the bus is full in the lowest terms? So if 3/4 of the bus was full and 2/5 get off, that's really a subtraction. I'm going to use 20 as my common denominator. 15/20 take away 8/20, which means if it was 3/4 full and 2/5 got off, 7/20 of the full bus was there. But when it doubles, that means you're going to have to add another 17/20. And in total, that would mean the bus was 14/20 full, or in lowest terms, 7/10, or as a percentage, the bus was 70% full. Question 10, your last question, says 2/3 plus 1/4 is less than 20/24 take away 1/12. So what we're going to do, this is a true false, we're going to actually solve this. So 2/3 plus 1/4, common denominator will be 12. I'm going to get 8/12 because I multiplied by 4. And I get 3/12, which means the sum of these two is 11/12, is less than whatever 20/24 take away 1/12 is. So 20/24 take away 2/24, which is the equivalent fraction, is 18/24, which is not in lowest terms. In lowest terms, if I was, actually I don't want lowest terms, I want to divide by 2, and I'll show you why. I'm going to get 9/12. And that's, I'm not going to reduce it to lowest terms because I really want that. Because when I write 9/12 here, and I read the question again, 11/12 is less than 9/12, I know the answer is false, because 11/12 is greater than 9/12. Again, if you have any questions with this section, make sure you write down your notes as to which ones you had trouble with. And on Monday, be sure to ask me for clarification.